This is Recovery Lifestyles with Carmel. Recovery Lifestyles is committed to raising awareness and ending stigmas surrounding addiction and mental health. On today's show, which will be a two-part series, I will be speaking with Martin, who is a recovery mentor with 18 years of sobriety. He is also the host of Recover Yourself podcast and the author of the upcoming book, Recover Yourself, Get Emotionally Sober with Portrait Method.
I remember hearing that years ago, and then somebody recently brought it back up into my awareness, and I was like, oh. He was like, yeah, what you're talking about, we used to talk about as second surrender. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I started...
why
again, I think it's just a difficult conversation. Because now you have to have a closed meeting that's closed within a closed group, right? So you would have to be like, all right, so you have to have a certain understanding of your recovery in order to be part of this conversation, because the verbiage that we use and the verbiage that I even use is very much like, you have to stop recovering from. You have to stop being afraid of that. And the only way to do that is to not be afraid of it and to pick up your life. People with 2 years can say, yeah, I'm ready to do that, and then get real fucked because get real messed up because like the conversation is, oh, I'm being called to this, but it's like, I'm being called to what? Like, are you really?
Why is this happening?
it's So before we spoke, like I did a throat chakra work. I don't know if you did, but my guess is not. I kid.
We must be hitting on something.
Yeah, we must. Like, there's something's happening. We're
clearing something.
Yeah. So second surrender, just it is about surrendering, because you surrender your life to God. In the 12 steps, right? You surrender like that help, and you surrender because you're helpless. Beyond that, like your second surrender is like, wait, this is life, and you kind of surrender to it all.
Yeah.
And that is solidifying a long-term sobriety. It's not, and it's about thinking clearly in all aspects of your life. Not just within alcohol and drugs, but it's like, where else are you practicing addictions, right? And the thing is like, when you start talking about that within the rooms, it's like, you have to go out and own your recovery completely. And the rooms are constantly this revolving door of new people coming in, where that's not always a healthy option to talk about.
For sure. And I mean, in the beginning, when we're getting clean and sober, I found it was detrimental for me to be there. I needed to be in those rooms.
Yeah.
But then we start to find out who we really are. We start to find out, what is it that I like? As you said, using art, that really helped you find out on a deeper level, who are you? Right? Because there was a lot that I hear you saying that you were stuffing down and using the drugs and alcohol to not be who you are. And so that's part of it. Once we get into longer term recovery, we start to have lives, but sometimes our behaviors turn into new addictions, and so
even going into the rooms, right? Like,
for sure.
I mean, there are people that are so adamant that you recover the way they recovered that it hurts them to see you, and that's fear. 18 years clean and sober, met someone whose recovery date is like a month before mine. She's got 18 years. And I was like, go on, girl, like, get it up, and she was like, where's your home group? And I was like, haven't been to a meeting in like a decade. And she just was like, well, like I got 18 years. Let's say I haven't been to a meeting in 10 years. she freaked out. Like, that's her fear, not mine. There's absolutely nothing about my recovery that is stating I am going to falter.
Right. And so do you believe that you needed the meetings in the beginning?
Yes. Well, I needed something to keep me clean and sober. My portrait project was one thing, because sitting down with one person, having to be responsible for myself in that situation, because again, I positioned myself as the guest, so I couldn't go in as a guest and be on the nod, right? I couldn't go in as a guest and be drunk. I couldn't go in as a guest and do those things. But then understanding that I had to hold myself accountable. And so it's always weird to say, but I utilized shame a bit to keep me clean and sober, because it's like, well, if I got to go in and tell somebody, I'm going to feel shame.
Right.
And so anything that you can do to stay like off for the first like year or two, like do it. Like, what's the problem? You know, like that's what you want. You want to be off of, like, I wanted to not drink and I wanted to not use. And so in order to do those things, I would be willing to use anything, even shame or even other emotions and stuff, in order to do that.
I think this is a big conversation, especially with the rise of online communities, recovery communities, is that there's kind of a battle between the old timers that you need to be going to meetings, you need to be doing that. And hold on, pause. I would just like to and I'm actually having this bit of this. What we're talking about right now is my current sponsor. We're having a disagreement about exactly this. I think that's why I keep calling.
and
Where
would
did
you say
take us?
Yeah, well, that's what I do. Well, let's tap in. So let me ask you. Do you find it difficult? Do you find yourself possibly keeping your voice down or demeaning your voice, or agreeing with your sponsor more, or are you trying to stand your ground?
Oh no, absolutely not. I have learned on my journey to speak my voice.
Good.
And I think it's more of a spiritual type of warfare going on.
Good. Yeah. Past and present, or past and future, are battling it out.
Yeah, because I'm like, absolutely. The first, 3 years for me, I needed to be in a meeting almost every single day. The first year, I was in almost 2 meetings a day. That is what got me sober.
Yes, that'll keep you. If you can't go out and buy if you're in a meeting, and that'll and it'll make you feel good for 3-4 hours.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
go to another meeting. Yep, just long enough to get to the next meeting.
That's exactly what I did in the beginning. But there was also, in my 15-year journey, there's like probably a good 6 years where I didn't attend one meeting. Right. I didn't feel the need to. But I was also doing a lot of self-development. I was also doing, a lot of self-care. I guess that's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so I was learning how to live as a sober person out in the world, not depending 100% on my group. Now, fast forward here, I'll be 15 years sober right away. And I currently go to one meeting a week, and I am loving it. And that's just where I'm at. So I have a hard time, because I know exactly what worked for me, and that's what I'm going to tell you to do. But probably 75% of the people I'm speaking with online and in other communities, they don't go to meetings. They've gotten sober through other means. So it's very hard for me to agree with that battle, that it has to be the 12-step program.
Yeah, it's.
And I know we might get a lot of flack for that.
No, and the thing is that you're here now, right? You're in a place right now that you feel something, and you feel that because it helped you.
Yeah.
And there may, there may still be fear involved in that, because it's like trusting other people to be okay is hard. like I want you to be well, and this is what made me well, and if you don't do that, I'm afraid for you.
Right. And so
And that,
but I have a huge trust. Like, this is what I've done, this is my example, but there are many different ways. But this is what worked for me. So if you're coming to me, you're probably going to want to follow my example, right?
Well,
but I'm not going to judge you if you don't.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like your recovery, right, has to be yours. Like, you had to decide, I'm going to meetings once a week, and that's great, and I feel amazing about it.
Yeah.
If, like, that was something else, like if you were like, oh, I go to a ceramics class once a week and that is my shit, right? Like, that's what I do. Like, all of a sudden, like, that can't be the answer for everybody.
Well, that probably is not what's keeping you sober.
Right.
It probably won't last too long.
Well, again, it's hard to say what works for who, right? And that's what, like, when I talk about this idea of recovering yourself, it's very much about, like, well, what do you need now that you're thinking clearly? And that's the point. Now that you're thinking clearly, as you continue your sober journey, you learn thinking clearly is a different thing. All the time. And you constantly question, how can I think more clearly? Like we've talked, and I know that you had a past where, like, having things and having the best things were a part of who you were. There's a point where you were thinking clearly and being like, wait, that doesn't make me who I am. Right? And there was a point when you said, well, drugs isn't the thing that makes me who I am. So you had to start thinking clearly by saying, like, having the thought and then getting it out of your system. There's a time frame in which it has to leave your system. And once it leaves your system, then you're thinking a little clearer. But if you're still having like thoughts of, like, oh, I want to use, or I want to buy this thing or whatever, like, where is that? Like, looking at that, examining it, becoming aware of why it's coming up, because it's often we feel uncomfortable and then boom. I was like, I feel uncomfortable. I want to go get a Gucci item, whatever. I don't even know what Gucci makes, but like, so like, we want to do that, right? Or we want to go buy a brand new car, or we want a bigger house,
or we need to go work out in an extreme way. That,
right.
So I look this way, and so that I get the endorphins going, and it's like, that's our new addiction. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And the thing is like, all of those things, like, when they add a value to your life that is, artificial, like, keeps you away from thinking what I call thinking clearly. And thinking clearly is always like, are you aware? Because you'll never think completely clearly, but are you aware of what's driving your thought process? Are you aware of what's driving your inner dialogue?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I come home to an empty house, I like to sit and be with myself. A lot of people come home to an empty house and they're like, oh, let's turn on the TV, and then I will make dinner not watching the TV because I need some noise in the background just to filter out that which I am thinking. And it's like, thinking clearly, like it is natural to just be alone with yourself. I think that is a natural state for us. And like, I watch my cat, who's running around my house, my room right now, and she's just sitting there, like, happy, happy as a clam, just like, look at that. Like, and that's the state that I want to reach. Like, just I want to just be somewhere where I just, like, look out the window for 6 hours and never just, like, get bored. Like.
Well, just be okay with it.
Yeah, just be okay.
You're hitting on something there that is huge, because that right there is why so many have to drown themselves, whether it's illegal or legal drugs or prescription drugs, I guess.
Or activities. Gambling, working out, like, any sort of thing, even travel, or, I even look at things that people call, well, that's a good thing, like reading. If you're reading 6 books a month, like,
slow down. That might be my thing.
Well, no, right, but what is it that you're driving? That what is it that's driving that? Why? Like, are you escaping anything? And maybe not. But if there is sort of escaping yourself, is that thinking clearly within yourself? And that's the step, right? That's the step of like, well, let's look at everything, whether it's good or bad. People can look at working out, and on my podcast, I talked to some people about like working out. It's like, well, I would work out 6 days a week, and it was always about my body, how it looked to other people.
Yeah.
I had to step back from that and realize that, like, I can work out. I can have a healthy relationship with working out without it being for other people. And it's always about, well, what is it for you, right? Like, I mean, I knew someone that listened to like 6 books on tape a week. And I was like, what are you doing? Like,
how do you even keep that all in your head?
Well, right. Like, is that a valuable use of your time, or are you kind of running from something? She's like, well, it's quiet in the office. And I'm like, yeah, I bet it is. Like, what does that mean to you? That you're taking your time and listening to a book on tape every minute of it. Like, I mean, I can't imagine books on tape are like getting through 2 or 3 a week. Like, I was like, what? Like I understand, like, books are nice, like, and we talk about reading and literature and all these things, but at some point, like, just filling your body with stuff or filling your time with stuff, it's like, that God in you has so much more for you than that book on tape.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think we just talked about a lot.
Quite a bit, yeah. You're gonna.
And I think this is like it'll be interesting to see who is attracted to this conversation, because those will be definitely our people.
Yeah, those are definitely, yeah. If you're interested in putting yourself in that place of like, am I thinking clearly, like, honestly?
Yeah,
like
self-awareness.
in this real big way. I mean, I talk about in my workshops a lot, like this idea of awareness, avoidance. That's our, like, we just want to avoid it. And we will avoid it with reading, we will avoid it with working out, we will avoid it with drugs and alcohol and work and the ideas of other people.
Well, we didn't talk I guess we did. Your podcast, Recover
My
Yourself.
podcast, yeah, Recover Yourself. I'll back up. Look. So yeah, Recover Yourself podcast. I think we
interviewed each other.
Yeah.
This was interesting.
This is a new format. No, Recover Yourself podcast is all about talking with people with long-term recovery. Again, very similar to like ending the stigma. But what I want to do with that is show people that, like, quitting is the best thing you can do, right? Like it opens up magic in our lives that you cannot even be aware of if you're using, and if you're taking yourself away from yourself at that pace. And so when people are questioning, if they're questioning to getting sober and they stumble across mine, they're like, this guy's got 12 years, or this person's got like 7 years or 8 years or 12, 10, whatever. And they're living real lives. Yeah. But then in every other, like, podcast, we're talking about the story, right? All of the other podcasts that are out there, so many of them are talking about, like, where were you when you were in the depths? I want to take that story to now what, right? Like, what did you do when you really got in touch with who you were? Like, you're rebuilding a life, and that is the thing we can look forward to, because so many people are always afraid, like, I'm not going to be me. And I want to say, you're going to be more me than you've ever been. You're going to be more you than you could even imagine.
And that's what I love about your podcast, is that you're talking to people who have long-term sobriety, and it's like, what have you created? Where are you now? And that brings so much hope to so many who are new, because it is scary when you're new. So there's nothing like going to that first meeting, right? Like I've known so many people who are just like, well, I'm not going to give it up forever. I'm not, it's just like, just keep telling me what you're not going to do. Like, I can't do anything for you. So just do what you're going to do. And when you end up with 6 years or 3 days, like. And that was exactly my experience. Was I just want to get sober enough to get my life back on track, have a little bit of like stability, and then I'll go back. Yeah. But then what I found out was there's so much more. And it's been just such an amazing journey. And I hear that within you as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it never stops. Never stops.
So as we wrap up, for anybody out there who is really resonating with what you're saying, how do they find you?
MartinJon.com.
Okay.
Or recoveryourself.life. They will take you to the same site. And MartinJon, Twitter, Instagram. You can find me, MartinJon. MartinJon. I am. Yeah. It's just Instagram goes straight. I check it every now and again just in case I get any messages. So if you're just on Twitter for whatever reason, like. I can't like Twitter is just I feel like Twitter is just a place for hate, and I'm sure it's not, but that's kind of like the vibe I get, and I've dug what's the community that I've built on Instagram. So
yeah, I love our Instagram community too.
Oh man, we're tight.
So I'm going to have your links available under this video as well. So if anybody wants to reach out to you and chat with you or have any questions, that'll be there. So again, thank you, Martin, so much for taking this time and spending it with me. And it's always a pleasure.
Always. Thank you.